Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is my first podcast, so I don't know what to expect.
Well, I'm excited. I feel like I'm glad that this is your first podcast and because one, it's going to be, we've known each other for a while.
Yep.
I think we first met in Boston at one of our Profit Summit events. And one of the things that I really respect about you and noticed about you from the beginning was that you were very humble, even saying this is our first podcast, about things that you've accomplished. But you are somebody who's truly in the arena, working and figuring things out. And I'm sure you're going to do a great job on the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'll try and watch my mouth. Well, they say that really smart people swear a lot, so I just stick with that.
Well, you know what? Swear away. We could make it an explicit rating, and with extra tons of insights. I'm excited to chat with you because we have talked a lot, worked together for the last couple of years. But when I was thinking about it, I don't even know if I've ever asked you or learned about kind of your start. You run a really incredible company called Holistic Habitat. You've got beautiful, beautiful stuff. And as you can see behind you, if you're watching the YouTube video, I would love to hear, how did you get started as an e-commerce entrepreneur?
Well, it was sort of accidentally. My very good friend and business partner, Rachel, and I were hanging out one day and just talking about how we were dissatisfied with certain parts of our respective careers, both of which were in the design field at the time. And we came up with an idea to have a store and to do it together. And so we started on that path. And then the more I thought about it, I'm about 10 years older than Rachel. And the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to be married to a physical brick and mortar location. So then it naturally sort of evolved from there to be online only. And we began figuring it out, and we tease each other and tell other people that we wouldn't have this business if we didn't have Google or YouTube, because that's how we figured stuff out. The Google and the YouTube.
And how many years ago was this?
It was in 2017 is when we started. The ideation sort of began in April of 2017, and then we went live with the website on July 4th of 2017. At first, it was a pretty slow roll, and then we figured out that we needed to find experts that were going to be able to help us take it to the next level. And once we were able to do that, and once I figured out how to do our own Facebook ads, Facebook, Instagram, then things really started to take off and we were able to start making money. And for us, the biggest motivator is being able to give back money. And that was something that is core to our personal belief system and, has unfolded into a business because, we just don't need much as far as I don't need a Ferrari, I don't need, I don't want any of those things, but I do want to help the collective good. And we saw an opportunity. It was 2017, obviously after the last election cycle in 2016. And so we just saw an opportunity where we could help and do what we really love.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to dive into it because you mentioned learning a lot from YouTube and Google, and back to my point at the beginning about you being in the arena and figuring things out and just taking on yourself. I know Facebook ads has been something that you have taken on yourself and done an incredible job learning how to become a Facebook marketer and becoming a very good Facebook marketer that drives a lot of sales. 2017, you kick it off. You said you were it was a little bit slow, and then you figured out a little bit around Facebook and Instagram, and then sales started to pick up. When did you know that you had something go? How long did that actually take?
I would say, let's see. So we started in July of 2017, and it was into 2018 that I started to see the debt rack up. The cost of starting a business. And so we hired some folks to do Facebook and Instagram ads for us. And that was a huge learning process in that it was mostly a disaster because they didn't understand our brand. And that's partially our fault. We didn't fully understand our brand at that point, So we didn't have a very clear direction brand wise. And the ads and the ad companies that were working for us just weren't hitting on much. However, there were some ads that did well. And so towards the end of 2018, I began to get super frustrated with the advertising ecosystem of finding the ads people, hiring them, getting them to do it, and getting the creative and all of that. And I just decided I can figure this out. This is not, nuclear science. Like I can Google it and I can figure it out. And so I did. And I started finding experts like Andrew Foxwell and folks like yourself with the email marketing. And we just started to learn and like reverse engineering what had worked. And I mean, I'll never forget getting out of my car one day going into Target. And like I had this epiphany of how they duplicated ads within an ad set because I couldn't like figure that out at first. And then I'm like, that's, and I wrote it down. And so I would remember when I got home that I would be able to then go in and say, okay, well, am I right? And reverse engineer it from there.
It's awesome. I think fast forwarding, we met in 2019. I think it was the summer or the spring.
It was fall. I remember because it was around my birthday because we were in Boston in September.
Boston in September.
We met in Boston in September.
I remember at that point you had, at the beginning of that year, really taken ownership over Facebook and things were starting to roll and you had consistent sales every single month and they were ramping up. Remember you came to the event and you're like, I've got things happening here. There's lots of stuff going on. And then from that moment in 2019, it's been a pretty like wild ride for you of growth over the last couple of years. I would love to hear from you kind of what's happened since showing up at the Profit Summit in September. How has the business changed? What are the things that you're doing, and what are some of the biggest takeaways you've had? What's the ride been like the last couple of years?
It's been a wild ride. It's been a fun ride. It's also been terrifying, but I like that. That motivates me, the fear. So when I met you in Boston, I was there to learn more about email because I felt like I'd finally sort of gotten into like a cruise zone with Instagram and Facebook ads where I could create them and target and do all the things I needed to do in there, in a sane amount of time. And then I was now in a position where I had enough time to do the email marketing. And then meanwhile, behind the scenes, now I have my amazing business partner who's taking all the photographs that you see on the website, all the product shots. And so she's feeding us this creativity, and the creative collateral that I needed in order to be able to keep producing these ads and take that into email. So I met you at that point, increased our business by 500% over 2018. So we're almost, last quarter of 2019, and we decided to go hard and heavy on email, which I did not want to do.
I remember.
Yeah, well, and I don't love writing. And so, that requires a fair amount of copywriting. That's just not something that I want to even be in my wheelhouse. And that is one thing that I think I've learned the most is, find, your strengths and know your weaknesses and hire out for your weaknesses. So at that point, we hired a freelance copywriter to do blog posts and deliver content for us. And that alleviated me of the anxiety and the dread of doing email. Because somehow along the way, I'm a designer by trade and by training, but I've discovered that I really dig all the analytics. And so that's why I like Facebook ads. That's why I like the analytics that go into the email part of it. And so then we were able to start taking it next level with email. And so we did that. And it that increased, I think the bulk of our email campaigns generate about 30% of our income each month, which is fantastic because the return on investment with that is huge. If you use something like Klaviyo, yeah, it's just amazing how much more it increased our ability to reach our audience and to connect with them. And then 2020 happened. And we were in San Diego at a conference, Rachel and I, and COVID started and the stock market started to tank. And I started getting scared about what was going to happen with the stock market, especially. And, because that's just a trickle down effect with that. And then for whatever reasons, we were brave enough and thankfully hindsight smart enough at the time to double down on our Facebook advertising. And when everybody else seemed to be pulling out in March and April of 2020, because everything was in so much turmoil, we just doubled our budget. And that was gangbusters. We almost broke the people, right? Broke ourselves because the volume that was coming in was overwhelming. So we had to dial it back a little bit and start figuring out our supply chain and start figuring out, how to meet the demand.
I remember it was almost like a switch. It was like all the things that you had known and things that were going on became cheaper and easier for a period of time. And it was like, oh, wow, we can spend a lot more money. But at the time, I think you had, was it one person in the warehouse, maybe two people?
We had two people in the warehouse, Rachel, my business partner, and then Zach, who, and we didn't have a real warehouse. We had storage units. So we didn't even have our own electrical outlets. So we couldn't plug in printers. We had to have battery operated printers. And so on March 1st of 2020, we signed the lease on a warehouse space that legitimately has its own power supply and plugs and, everything, air conditioning. That was March 1st. And that was a godsend. That was the universe doing for us that we didn't know what needed to happen, because that allowed us to keep up with the demand that we started to see in April, May, and June of 2020.
What's crazy is how that switched though, because I remember at the beginning of March, it was like, oh no, we just signed a lease and things are going absolutely crazy. But when you look back on it, it's like, if you hadn't done it then, it would have been way more challenging to sign a lease later on. It wouldn't have been able to be, and all that growth, you had your space ready to go.
Right. And it saved us from the COVID problems, right? Yeah. So we had a contained work environment for our, at the time, one employee, Zach, where Rachel could also go, who was also pregnant at the time during this COVID, beginnings, and they could work safely, socially distanced from each other. And we started to bring in products that would make us essential in the eyes of the law, as far as, with all these new essential businesses and, so we started to bring in things that we were going to be able to ship in order to make it so that God forbid Zach got pulled over in front of the warehouse and why is he going to work when the whole state is shut down? So I wanted to spare us that sort of thing. And it did. It allowed us to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, that was so exciting watching that and seeing how things continued month over month. You're like, all right, now we've got increased demand. Now we're solving some of the back end issue with more warehouse space, more warehouse people, and then in all of that, you were managing a team, hiring people, and continuing to grow. When you look back on 2020, what are some of the biggest things that you learned as a leader of your organization?
Well, I'm a co-leader. I need to say that because Rachel, without her, I wouldn't be here. She is the most resourceful human being I know. And, for the two of us, 2020 was really a blessing. And I say that with a heavy heart because I know how horrible it was for so many people. But we learned how much less we need. You know, I said at the beginning, we don't need much. And when we stepped back, I mean, my husband and I, we realized we don't need this house that we have in Charlotte anymore because he's working from home now and that's going to stay the way that is. And we don't need all these square feet. What we need is nature and quiet time. And we found it 2 hours from Charlotte in the mountains of North Carolina. And so, yes, we moved, which felt a little bonkers at the time, but we were able to do it safely. And we learned that we just don't need all the stuff we think we need. With that, it gives you a clarity that I've never had before. And so it allows us to really be able to step back and prioritize within the business problems. Like, is this an immediate problem, or is this something we can put on the back burner? Or is this something that we don't even need to think about? Or this has to be the first thing we do right now. And what's going to move the needle? You taught me that. What do I do today that's going to physically move the needle on our business? And those are the things I try and focus on, as opposed to all the minutia that I can get caught up in.
Sure. It's easy for all of us to get caught up in, especially with just so much distraction. And even last year was an incredibly distracting year, right? Like if you were plugged in at all to like anything like that, every day there was some new catastrophe designed to distract you. I'd be interested. I want to go back to Facebook ads in a little bit because I know you know a lot about that, and we'll get tactical. But I'd be interested in, we've been working together for the last year and a half almost, and I would love to hear what's kind of the biggest mindset shift or thing that you've learned or things you've changed since we've been working together.
I have gotten much more focused on the profitability of the business and the value of the business outside of just the everyday, sales. So making our business something that we can hand down to our kids or to another organization of people that have the similar vision, that generational type of wealth. And I don't mean wealth in terms of stuff. I mean, like a fulfilling job that you love to do that's creative, where you're also able to help other people. That to me is true wealth. Being able to create this business moving forward so that we can give it away to family or whomever that, at some point, because I don't want to do this for a million years. I think working with you really helped me get clear. You helped us start making a profit. And that was something, you showed me where I needed to cut and where I needed to spend. And I didn't know any of that. You also hooked me up with the CFO. And that was a lifesaver because nobody wants me to do their books ever. And I should not be doing my books ever. And I learned that the hard way the first year and really struggled trying to do it the second year. Finally, in the third year, we hired the CFO, and that has, between you and the CFO, we have been able to start to really scale and start to pay some of our loan back that started the business and hire new people and do all of the things that we wanted to do, but we're not in our zone of genius. We need other people in the village with different zones of genius, right?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to one of the things I said from the beginning was your ability to like hop in and learn things that you're uncomfortable with, combined with the ability to know when it's something that you're probably not going to want to become an expert in, and work with other people and bring them in and let them help you. Right. And that's an incredible skill.
And I don't know that I ever thought of it as a skill. I think I appreciate that. Thank you. But I think of it more as a necessity. It's just like you have to get out of your own way. And,
Yeah.
I know that I've mentioned this to you, but, having spent 10 years of my life now sober and in a 12-step program, I've learned, that I am my biggest obstacle 99% of the time. And, it's especially with e-commerce, like it's not my opinion that matters about whatever's happening on the website. It's the customer's opinion. It's, the person that's landed on your website. And so making that mind shift and, getting out of your ego, all of that, is figure outable, right? Like it may not be like inherent, in your being to do that, but if you can have a little bit of perspective and humility and step back and go, okay, nobody needs to be doing their books or writing code or messing around inside the guts of the website. Like, yeah, you just don't.
I love that. I mean, it's so true. I think every single person, most of the time, all the limits that you put on yourself are your own self-imposed limits.
Sure.
If you're struggling and you are starting to look out and be like, oh, this is what's frustrating in my life, then it almost always comes back around and to land squarely on you, which is also why I like being an entrepreneur and I like working with entrepreneurs. At the end of the day, there's a lot of skin in the game and accountability, and it's interesting. I think, switching a little bit of gears, but keeping it somewhat related, I think what has been interesting is, you have become really, really, really good at Facebook ads and really good at driving growth in your business from putting in the time and the energy to learn. What are some of the resources that that helped you along the journey to get better at Facebook ads? Besides some of the stuff you've already mentioned, I know you talked about Foxwell on this podcast, but what else are you doing to actually learn this stuff?
I started using Twitter. I don't tweet. I think I've only sent one tweet ever, but I follow a lot of ads people and marketing people on Twitter. And that is a fantastic rabbit hole that you can get into where you find one tweet with a link and you can learn so much and you can ask folks questions. Getting into Facebook groups that are specific to advertising, digital marketing specifically, that has been a major help. I'm in this group with all of these experts and they allowed me to join, not because I'm an expert, I don't think, but because I promised I would share my results, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take what they're doing and I'm going to apply it. And then I will share what's working and what's not working. And that has been just incredible and indispensable. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do if with this new iOS 14 stuff that has shown up on the scene this year, just to make things interesting. I wouldn't know what to do. And I still, with all the changes, I'm relearning a lot of things, but I check in with different experts via Twitter and via Facebook groups daily, sometimes multiple times a day because things change rapidly. I think I just listen a lot. I read a ton. And so, I'll read, different like newsletters from Andrew. I'll read, and then I have to go and Google half the things he said in there just to figure out. But, we can always figure it out, right? Like nothing's ever 100% above your head. And so I think those have been my best resources, honestly, Twitter, which seems silly.
Twitter, it's funny because I hired someone new recently and she was telling me, she was like, I thought Twitter was dead before I started working here. Then I started diving into like the e-commerce space and realized, oh no, it's like, there's a lot going on Twitter in our space, conversations that happen in real time. And a lot of it is noise, right? But there's signal. You can start to realize, okay, who's actually doing cool, interesting stuff and follow those people. What are some of the things you've learned about Facebook ads and running ads that convert over the last couple of years as you've gotten better at this?
I test creative a lot. Whenever we have 2 seasons a year, essentially in the home decor business. So you have spring, summer, winter, fall. And so our imagery changes, of course, with each season. And we know mostly what works, but you don't always know. And a lot of times you're very surprised by a particular product, particular photo that hits a certain way and takes off as far as the ad's concerned. I think really knowing your customer, I am my customer and Rachel is our customer, and talking to our customers on Instagram. We do a lot of that in our DMs and in stories, and learning what they want. Surveys have been huge for us. Do you
run those on Facebook, or where do you run those surveys?
No, we run those in our email campaigns. So we'll email our really good customers with a survey, ask them to fill it out in exchange for a discount code, and then have all of that dumped into, a Google sheet where we can then sit back and read and look and really get some insight on what they're loving, what they don't love. And that could be anything from product offering to the way the website works to what I'm sending in the emails. I've learned too that personal emails, even though I don't always write all the copy, I always tend to write a personal, hey, y'all, it's Kristen, and then some sort of that people connect with that. And owning your mistakes. That has been like huge for us specifically with email stuff, like when you screw up, because we screw up on the regular. But Facebook ads to me are kind of intuitive. And that's because I know my brand, right? So I know what audiences I want to start targeting for certain products. So that's been a help there as well.
So let's talk about this, mistakes. I'm interested. What are some of the mistakes? What's a mistake that you've made since starting the business, and what did you learn from it?
That's a good question. I mean, they're not huge, like awful mistakes, but my least favorite one is, well, I do like mistakes because I always try and learn from them, so they don't upset me. But when things happened last summer with George Floyd, I sent an email about what we think and what we feel about what happened. And in that, I transposed 2 letters in George Floyd's name. That's just a giant fuck up, because I just didn't proofread it, and it's disrespectful. And it came across to a lot of our customers as disrespectful. And so I had to sit down and email each customer that responded and tell them, you're absolutely right. I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. Obviously it wasn't intentional, but at that time too, people were very sensitive, and we still are for good reason. That was a big, screw up. I sent an email one time that the font said, "We love deck season." And it was a new font that we had just started using, and it read, "We love dick season."
You know what? It's going to be it's going to have maybe even increase open rates, response rates. At the end of the day, it may drive more sales.
I know, I've been making myself blush just even thinking about it, because it was just I didn't see it, on my screen, because I do all of the graphic design stuff, and anyway, but, and I think I made mistakes. I can't put my finger exactly on what they were, but in a lot of our discussions or in our emails, about Black Lives Matter, because we believe Black Lives Matter, and we finding our wording around that was difficult for me, because I'm clearly a white woman with a lot of privilege, and I know that. But we have to do it anyway and make the mistake, whichever mistake it may be, because it's just something that we need to talk about. We feel that as a brand, we feel that's incredibly important, and so I've had to take heat quite a bit from social media and on emails. And I always just own it. And you're right. You have a perfectly good point. Thank you. I'm learning.
I think one of the things that you guys do well is you have a mission behind what you're doing, and you stand for that mission. What would you share with other purpose-built brands that has been helpful as you've worked on, as I think that is a challenge for everybody who's got a purpose, a mission driven or a purpose driven brand, to be able to find your voice and find what you truly believe in. What has been helpful for you as you've navigated this field?
Well, but being willing to make mistakes, being willing to, hear feedback. That's, I think, the most important thing there is really being willing to hear and take what other people say to you seriously, wholeheartedly. Some of it, obviously, you have to take with a grain of salt. Some of it's just,
Yeah.
but, take that learning and turn it back into better actions moving forward. And so finding your voice, though, that I think is just, it depends on what you're talking about. We're obviously and have been talking about something as volatile as Black Lives Matter. And so that has been, again, a process of making mistakes and being willing to own them. I think not being afraid to alienate customers, potential customers. That is something that, happens with us. We're accustomed to it. We've had people like, oh, good job alienating half the country or whatever. And that's okay.
You guys are still growing. It has not, the amount of growth that you've had, it's almost at the upper limits of what you guys could even handle.
Right. And I think that speaks to the consumer wants to buy from other brands that stand for something. And it could, whatever is important to that consumer, they will find, hopefully for them, the right brand. And we cannot and refuse to be everything to everybody, because that is going to exhaust you. We refuse. I don't do that in my personal everyday life, and I'm just certainly not about to do it when it comes to our business.
And it's really cool to see, because it doesn't, like, the niche that you guys have is it's big. Like, the beautiful thing about being able to sell everywhere is that even if you polarize some people, it's still massive, and it's growing so fast.
Well, it's massive, and it builds loyalty.
Yeah.
We have
it's really
very high return customer rate. We're at about 35 or 40% the last time I looked. And I am grateful for that every day. And we make sure we thank our customers for that too.
And that's not in an industry where it's like normal. You're not selling clothes, right? You're not selling fast fashion where it's like, oh, people can buy stuff all the time, or replenishables.
Right.
What is something that you wish you knew before going down this entrepreneurship journey and becoming one of the co-founders of an online brand?
I wish we had known to hire experts sooner. I would have taken, we tried doing some retail, like where we were in a few stores in Charlotte, I would have far preferred to have taken all of that cash flow and moved, that we did on inventory for that, and put that into experts early on. People that hold your hand, people that tell you the cold, hard truth. And because that's what you need to hear when you're first starting out, because you're going to save so much time and money in the long run. So I think definitely, like, finding folks like you, finding, e-commerce influence, podcasts, and also finding, the group that we're all in, like all those masterminds and things that I would have done before we even opened the doors, had I known, or opened the website.
Sure. What is keeping you up at night now? Like, obviously the business has changed a lot, and I've watched you grow. What was like your huge month that you were celebrating a year ago is like, you would do that in like 2 weeks now. And things have changed. Your roles changed a little bit. What are the things on your mind that like are keeping you up right now, that you're at this point in your business are the challenges you're facing?
Right now, I think innovating new products and finding the time to do that, that is not necessarily what's keeping me up at right now, keeping me up at night is our Facebook ads, because they've changed so much. I feel like I've come to a peace with it for the moment, where I found a couple ads that are working really well, and I'm just going to leave it alone until the dust settles as best as I can. Innovating, finding new products, creating new products with makers, and staying on top of that. Supply chain logistics are a problem right now, and just still backlash from COVID. And it's going to stay like that, I believe, for a little bit longer. I'm hoping by the end of the year, we won't have, we had to create an entire collection essentially of stuff that is sold out that we're going to get back in. We just don't know when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of taken away from COVID, we had such a reliance on like just in time inventory and, expecting that you could order things to get them there at the last moment and then ship them out, and that everything was going to work perfectly. And I've seen a lot of my clients, the ones that have done well, were the ones that had placed bigger orders and had some more inventory when everybody else was out. They were still there, and they, maybe were a little bit more conservative with their logistics. And they're like, okay, well, we need to stockpile a little bit more. That actually paid off. And I think that do you feel like that's going to continue? Has your mindset changed a little bit, or what have you learned from the COVID situation that you'll take forward that is going to help you as a business owner?
Yeah, I think definitely bringing in more inventory. We lucked out because, we got the warehouse that had the space. So we had already started to bulk up our ordering just prior to March. So we had big orders coming in because now we had the space for them. And, that was a gamble at the time. Of course, now we know it was smart. I think keeping enough inventory is, we picked up an app along the way that has been, really helpful. It's called Inventory Planner. It's a Shopify app. It might be for other platforms too, but that helps us forecast out based on sales happening in the last 90 days, or you can even get it down to the sales in the last 2 weeks, and it will forecast. And it will also have built-in forecasting for holidays and, the bigger buying seasons like around Christmas and that sort of thing. And that's been tremendous for us because it really helps us gauge. But I also keep a very close eye on, who's signing up for back in stock alerts and for what. And so when we place an order, Inventory Planner might say, oh, you only need 25 of these, but I know I've got 200 people on a waiting list for them. So I'm going to bring in, double that. And so far, so good.
Kristen, it's been awesome. If you were in my shoes today, what would you have asked yourself that I did not ask?
Oh, geez, Austin. What would I have asked myself? How do you increase your average order value every month?
How do you do that?
You don't. I'm kidding. You try really hard. No, let me think about this.
Well, let's talk about average order value, because that's interesting. I know that's been something that you monitor consistently. What are some of the things you've tried to impact average order value, and how have they worked? And what are the metrics that you're looking at?
Average order value, I look at, of course, the average order value. And we look at, how easily are people getting to our free shipping threshold? Are they missing it by $1? Are they missing it by $10? We try to get them there, and we try and get them there with bundles. We're working on more of those. And we've also found too that when we do need to run a sale, like for instance, right after Christmas, we got a gigantic shipment that was supposed to be there in November. And because of COVID, it arrived in January. So we needed to get rid of some of that. So we did a sale where I think it was, any 4 items, you get 20% off. And that was amazing. I had no idea. Usually we just do a flat 20% off if we're going to do a big sale. And we try not to do them very often. But that was a great one for us. And the bundles, of course, those are helping us as well. And we're not quite where we want to be.
Diving into that, that's something new. I mean, I think over the last year and a half, we were talking about profitability and how you've gotten more profitable. that has been a huge change. Like we've talked extensively about running sales, how to do it in a way that doesn't erode profit margin. And yeah, what have you learned from that? Because I know there's been massive changes, maybe not massive changes, but there's been changes around how you've run sales and think about your gross margin.
Sure. Yeah, we definitely run sales on product lines that we buy better. We try not to put things on sale that we don't buy really well, specifically like artisan made products. We don't make a ton of money on those. For those product lines, we just really love showcasing the artists and being able to, take beautiful pictures of their gorgeous artwork, pottery and that kind of thing. So we try and keep those things from going on sale. And we test different thresholds, right? So 4 items, 20% off. How's that going to go? Let's try 3 items. Let's try and see, 20% off any purchase of $175 or more, because then that still gets them to our $125, free shipping. And really, I feel like, it just depends on the time of year, but we just try different stuff all the time. Like we're just not afraid to give something else a whirl. Why not? And of course, always paying close attention to our profit margins, because ours is, already built in lower because we're giving back 15% of the profit that we make to different organizations. We have to keep a very close eye on that.
For sure. For sure. Kristen, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you hopping on and chatting. For people who want to connect more with you or learn more about you, what's the best place for you direct them to go?
Instagram. You can just find us at Holistic Habitat CLT on Instagram. And I am there every day, many times a day. We answer all of our own comments, all of our questions, any DMs you send. It's going to be Rachel or myself that's in there, and that's where you'll find us the most. And you can also join our Facebook Insiders group, which is our Holistic Habitat Insiders group. I'm there too.
Maybe inspired by some of the beautiful pieces and stages that you've got there, and then also lots of dogs.
Yes, lots of dogs.
Kristen, thanks so much. Dogs, dogs stop the scroll.
They do. They do.
They do. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks. Bye, Austin.